Good to go?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the April 21st, 2022 meeting of the Technical Coordinating Committee. I will go ahead and now call the meeting to order. Please give your attention to this short video.
Due to COVID-19, this meeting will be conducted as a Zoom meeting pursuant to the provisions of Assembly Bill 361, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act. This meeting is being live streamed on the CCTA website. The chair will call upon members, staff, and other speakers by name. Please speak clearly and state your name before giving comments or remarks. Persons participating via Zoom with their cameras enabled are reminded that their activities are visible to viewers. Members participating by Zoom wishing to speak should physically raise their hand and unmute their mic when called upon. Members should mute their mics when done speaking. Citizens participating by Zoom wishing to speak should use the Raise Hand feature or dial *9 if participating via phone, and the chair or staff will call upon them at the appropriate time. Citizens will have 3 minutes to speak. After 3 minutes, staff will lower their hand and mute their mic. Participants via phone will be called upon by the last 4 digits of their phone number. It is requested that public speakers state their names and organization, but providing such information is voluntary. Written public comments received in accordance with the teleconferencing special notice for public comment guidelines are printed on the meeting agenda. If authors of the written correspondence would like to speak, they should raise their hand and the chair will call upon them at the appropriate time. All written correspondence received after that and during the meeting will be entered into the record. A roll call vote will be taken for all action items. Thank you for participating in a meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority.
Thank you, Christina. Could you now please conduct the roll call?
Sure can. Member Anderson. Member Ballinger. Member Bobadilla. Member Chen. Member Conradi. Member Diaz.
Here.
Member Dillard.
Here.
Member Doe.
Here.
Member Fahey.
Here.
Member Greenblatt.
Here.
Member Hu. Member Kirsthavan.
Present.
Member Mercurio.
Here.
Member Nelson. Member Ortiz. Member Reeves.
Here.
Member Rawani. Member Singh. Member Sutanatera.
Santira. Here.
Thank you. Member Wang. Member or Vice Chair Smith
Here.
and Chair Stamps.
Here, thank you. The next item on the agenda is oh, I'm sorry, Christina, do we have a quorum?
We do.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
The next item on the agenda is public comment. Christina, have we received any written public comment?
Sorry, we have not received any public comment.
No problem, thank you. Is there anyone on the phone wishing to speak during public comment on an item that's not a part of the agenda? If so, please raise your hand and staff or I will call upon you. And we'll wait a few moments to see if there's anyone in the queue. Christina, if you could verify that for us, please.
I see no hands raised.
All right, thank you very much. We'll go ahead and move on the agenda to the consent calendar. Are there any changes, comments, et cetera, from committee members? Or does anyone want to pull an item off of the agenda?
No hands raised.
Thank you very much. Have we received any written public comment Christina?
No, we have not.
All right. And finally, if anyone from the public would like to speak on the consent calendar, please raise your hand now. Do we have anyone in the queue?
I see no hands raised.
Thank you very much. Just as a reminder to the committee members, due to the size of the TCC, we will handle a motion and roll call vote after the last regular agenda item has been presented. With that, we'll go ahead and move on to the regular agenda items. And the first item up is project monitoring. And for this, we have Stephanie.
Yes, thank you, Chair Stamps. And this is item 4A, project monitoring, and it is a information item. I'll just share screen real quick, and so you can see the packet. So this is a standing item we have on our TCC meetings during each time we meet, and it's to monitor STIP, OBAG, ATP, HVP, HSIP, and inactive projects. What you're looking at on screen right now is the STIP table, and this has been reflected to show the latest 2022 STIP programming, which was approved by the CTC in March. I would just highlight that there are 2 projects added to the STIP project list, and they are both authority-led. They are the Northbound Express Lane Phase 1 for design and the Phase 6A Coordinated Adaptive Ramp Metering for both PSNE and construction. Also, just to note, one project was deleted from the list, which was the one up Creek Bark TOD, and that was due to the funding being lapsed with the funding deadlines and milestones. So just wanting to highlight that for you. The other item on another table to draw your attention to is attachment B, and they are the OBAG 2 funding table. Sorry, this is really small, but basically for the current fiscal year 21-22, we still have a handful of projects that are still pending obligation. We have a few that have received E76, but there's a few that are still working on it. So we have already passed the February 1st milestone where funds become first come, first served, regardless of funding year. So just highlighting to Brentwood, San Pablo, Pittsburgh, Danville, Pinot, and Richmond. Sorry to call you out, but these are projects that need to get their E76 before the federal fiscal year ends. But again, the funds are already kind of at risk because they are open to every jurisdictions in the Bay Area. So just want to make sure you guys are moving towards getting the E76. And then the next page is for the next fiscal year, the 22-23. And these are projects that are in the last year of OBAG 2. Later in the agenda, there will be a discussion of OBAG 3. So you guys know OBAG 2 is winding down, and these projects need to or must get their E76 by January 31st of next year. And there will not be any more extension or moving out or reprogramming. So if you see your project on this list or your jurisdiction, or rather even your RTPC, if you see, please maybe report back to your RTPC group and make sure that things are moving and that they're hit. So just maybe target submitting your RFA November 1st or sooner, so that you get your E76 by end of January 2023. And then just highlighting the inactive project list, which is very, very short this time, which is very good. So thank you for everyone who's doing their part in providing invoices to Caltrans or submitting to them. So just please continue the good work of submitting projects invoices to Caltrans for reimbursements to avoid being on this list, which will be important as we move forward to OBAG 3 and not wanting to get into any blacklist or list of people that are of concern. So just FYI. So this is, again, informational item, no action needed from the committee, but I'll be happy to take any questions. I see a hand from Andy.
Yes, thank you. If I may, this is actually more just a comment, statement, whatever, rather not a question. Just for the benefit of everybody here, that the Walnut Creek TOD project that funding was lost due to inactivity, that was not a City of Walnut Creek project.
Oh, yes, sorry.
That was a BART project. So in case any of you ever wind up being on a scoring panel for grants. Walnut Creek, we do follow through with our grant projects. So
Yes, it is a BART-led project. It is in the BART station, so it is sponsored by BART. And I know Celestine is here, so not to put a spotlight, but I just wanted to make sure the group is aware of the changes in the plan.
thanks.
So, and I see Saravana has a question.
Thank you, Stephanie, for the information. One question is, does CCTA inform the respective city contact with this list, or is it just the TCC, the avenue?
So to your question, we do monitoring, Saravana. So to update that table, we reach out to all the local sponsors, the project sponsor rather, on the milestone dates. So you saw like NEPA clearance, field review, and right-of-way search. So we do contact the project sponsors to get their progress and continue to hound them to make sure things are moving forward. So for Concord, we've been bugging Bernard and mainly because he's the SPOC.
Yeah,
so that's how.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you, committee members, for the comments thus far. Andy, we will not hold it against you, so your comments have been noted. Any other comments from the committee on this item or questions? I don't see any hands, so I did have one question real quick, Stephanie, if I may, on that BART TOD project. Do the funds go back to the state for reallocation, or are they moved around inside the county?
It moves around in the county. It comes back to the county share.
Got it. All right. Thank you very much. Okay. If no other comments or questions on this item, thank you again, Stephanie. We'll go ahead and move on to item 4B, which is the Contra Costa County priorities for development of project study reports. Is this also you, Stephanie?
Mine. Yep, it's mine as well. Just combining both of my items together for smooth transitions. So this
thank you.
This is item 4B, and this does require action from this committee. So Caltrans is requesting Contra Costa's list of priority for project study reports, and that to be developed with oversight by Caltrans staff. And this is a list that looks out 3 years. So this list covers fiscal year 23 through fiscal year 25. And this list is just for Caltrans use for them to manage their staff resources. You may be aware, as we were just talking about STIP, the highway projects need a PSR in order to compete for STIP funding. And the projects on this list also need to be in MTC's, the latest regional transportation plan, which is the PBA 2050. So in order to be included in this PSR list, project study report list, it needs to be in the RTP. And also just to note, those sponsors who want to pursue the PSR development needs to reimburse Caltrans for their oversight efforts. So in developing this draft list that's in front of you, staff review the current RTP project list and identify projects that will impact the highway, this Caltrans right-of-way or within Caltrans right-of-way, and which would need a PSR. I reached out to a couple of jurisdictions that had projects on the RTP list, and none of them were really ready to move forward and to place their project on this list. So what you're seeing on the screen is attachment A in your packet or attached to this agenda item or staff report. The changes made are in red, and most of them are just deletion because the PSRs for these projects are already underway or if not already been completed. And the others are just minor updates for dates, like if they were not ready, moved it out. So those are the major changes. And to note, there are two additions, and they are sponsored by CCTA, and they are the first one, the Innovate 680 Shared Mobility Hubs Bollinger Canyon Park and Ride in San Ramon, and the project is in feasibility study stage. And we added this project because that park and ride is owned by Caltrans, and it's anticipated there would be a PID document of some sort for that project if it needs to move forward. It will move forward. And then the other project we added is for the express lanes on Highway 4. CCTA conducted and completed a feasibility study last year on express lanes, and we anticipated that we would begin a PID process in the next fiscal year of fiscal year 23-24. So just this list is updated every year and looking out 3 years every time. And so there are opportunities to add or delete or move. And then I don't think if you're not on this list, you're not able to pursue a PID or anything, but just, I think this is just for Caltrans to manage their resources and know what could be coming up in the next 3 years. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I know we're delaying the votes till later, but this is an action item that needs your approval. And after that, we can submit this for Caltrans review and submittal. So with that, I'll keep the list up in case you guys want to see, but I see it as we're entertaining questions, but let me know if I'm watching for hands and see if there's any questions. Leah.
Yeah, hi. I was wondering if our 28B funds could be used to fund the reports.
20B funds? Is that your sub-regional? Sorry, I'm not.
Yeah.
I think so. That's transportation related. Yes.
Okay.
That's your local discretion. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from committee members? Thank you very much, Stephanie, for the report.
Sure. Let me unshare. So there you go.
Any hands, any comments, any questions from committee members? Looking at the participants list, I see none. If you don't know how to raise your hand, just go ahead and unmute yourself and speak up. I think we're good. You knocked it out of the park, Stephanie. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
No questions. Okay. With that, we'll go. And again, as Stephanie mentioned, because of the size of the committee, we'll take a roll call vote on all action items at the end of the meeting. We'll go ahead and move on to item 4C. This is the Bi-County Activity-Based Travel Demand Model Development Update. This sounds like a Matt Kelly special. Am I right on that?
How'd you guess, Jamar? Yeah.
Right on. Take it away, sir.
Thanks. Thanks, Jamar. Chair Stamps. Matt Kelly, Senior Transportation Planner for CCTA. I'm going to share my screen or attempt to do so. Are you seeing?
Not yet. There, I see it. But it's not on the, it's on the notes.
Okay, so I am
Matt,
here to
Matt,
talk
you're
about-
in presenter mode rather than
Yeah.
presentation mode.
Gotcha.
Yeah. We see notes. Yeah,
Swap it. How
perfect.
about that?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay. Thank you all. It's good to be here. I'm here to talk about the status of our model update. As you may remember, we've talked about this, here and there over the years. It's come before this committee. We initially did an evaluation study back in 2017 or 18 to decide what we should do with our model. And at that time, we decided to adopt MTC's travel model, their current travel model. So that was one of the main objectives, to remain consistent with MTC's model. Our existing model is a trip-based model. It's now considered old school, and MTC has moved to this activity-based modeling platform that does a much more detailed job of forecasting all modes and all trips. And so that was one of the main goals, was to remain consistent with MTC's model, especially because they used their model to analyze the RTP, Plan Bay Area 2050. And whatever we do, all of our modeling assumptions need to be consistent with the current RTP. So, the evaluation study decided the easiest way to do that and kind of move forward in the modeling landscape was to adopt MTC's travel model using this new activity-based modeling platform. The goal was to take their model and really make it more fine-tuned for Contra Costa County, so that we could be doing really looking at multimodal corridors, and the types of analysis that you guys need to do, the cities need to do, and the county for your land use developments and things like that. We wanted to add San Joaquin County to the model, to our current 9-county Bay Area structure, because, well, one, we have projects like 239. There's things like Valley Link that cross the not just county line, but what we call the edge of the model. They kind of disappear across the edge of the model, and we just get like kind of canned information, preset information from the edge of the model from MTC. We want true interaction in the model with San Joaquin. And then, for CCTA, one of our main goals was to be able to use this new tool for our countywide transportation plan update analysis that we're about to get started on. So the project history, it actually goes back much earlier than spring 2020. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because Sarah Vanna, our Concord rep, used to work for Alameda CTC, and she and I started talking one day, and we were both kind of kicking around the idea of what to do, how to update our local models. We each have similar models, and we said, hey, we both want to kind of upgrade to this new modeling system. We both want to be consistent with MTC. Why don't we do a coordinated effort to do this? And it would be focused on the 2 counties, since we share 3 sides of our counties. It just seemed to make a lot of sense. So I want to give Sarah Vanna her credit, because she was definitely part of this conversation, probably going back to at least 2019. And so in spring 2020, we actually entered into a cooperative agreement with Alameda CTC, where we put up matching funds to fund the update. We would each pay 50% of all consultant costs, but that CCTA would actually manage the consultant contract. And so and we modeled it after an agreement we had with Alameda CTC on this San Pablo Avenue corridor, where it was kind of the reverse, where we partnered funding wise, but that they retained the consultant and managed the consultant. So we decided to take on this one. We retained WSP led team last year. Kittleson is also on that team for some good local knowledge. They've worked with both CCTA and Alameda CTC's model, so they're kind of that link to both our models that we were looking for in a consultant contract. Last fall, through this group, we established we recruited members for our technical working group that would kind of oversee at a relatively high level, oversee the development of the model. And I'd like to thank Chair Stamps and members Dillard and Kunrati for their participation on this group. We'll be putting them to more work as we get through the process. The last big thing we did was a data collection effort this spring, and I'll get back to that in just a second and talk about the asterisk. So that technical working group, the input they are providing on this effort, they helped us with a kind of a 30,000 foot look at our TAS structure. We have several thousand traffic analysis zones in the model. We didn't want anybody to have to go through every single one, because they are so fine grained. We feel they do a good job of covering everything, but we asked the technical working group to take a look at that. And we did get good comments from both member Stamps and Dillard. So thank you for those. Their next task will be to look at our model validation, which will be coming up later this year. Once that's in place, we'll be starting to generate forecasts. We're talking about future year forecasts out to 2050. That'll happen this fall. And then there'll be kind of the group will look at to kind of bless the model before we take it to our respective boards for adoptions. And that'll be kind of at the end of this year. The effort we are undergoing right now is a review of the network. And that actually includes both the roadway network and the transit network. On Monday, I believe, WSP sent out a memo to each of the cities. A few of you in this room may have been on that distribution list. And really what we're looking for you to do there is to look at the maps we've provided, mark them up if you see any issues. We provided facility types, and we want you to take a look at those, but it's the number of lanes that to me are the most important, because that determines the capacity, but the facility type determines speed and some other things. So we want you to take a look at them. Each town does not have a lot of routes in the model. There's a lot of just kind of surface, the local residential streets you see at the bottom of that table that we don't really need you to look at. It's more the larger facility types. But we've sent that out to you. For the transit folks, we'll be contacting you later on for your review of the transit network. And I would also like to thank the transit providers for providing transit data as part of our data collection effort. I forgot about that. They were very helpful in that. So this is kind of what the maps look like here. They're color coded by the facility type. And then there's labels once you zoom in, the number of lanes per direction. So it's once you zoom in, it's pretty easy to see, as you can tell, or probably can tell, this is San Ramon. There's not a whole lot of roads to look at. You want to make sure that, Crow Canyon is 6 lanes in the right places and 4 lanes in the right places, those types of things. And you can mark up a PDF just like this map here, where someone has circled a link and wrote a little note in the PDF, or you can put a balloon, comment bubble pointing at your comment. We're not going for super high technology here. We want to make sure you can get us any comments you have. So once again, this has gone out on Monday to the jurisdictions, and we hope to get your input by, I think it's like the second week in May. And the transit, will follow up with the transit providers to have them look at their transit networks, probably after we complete the roadway network review. So here's a general schedule, just looking by quarter. So we're going through all of the kind of the model inputs now, the land use, the networks, the base year data, and then we get into the model calibration, then we start the forecasts, the model documentation, training, and then technical assistance for users of the model. But all that is out in 2023 once we actually complete the model. I think I'll focus on next steps for now. Like I said, we just kind of completed the data, collecting data from the jurisdictions and transit agencies. Contra Costa folks did a really good job of getting us a lot of good local data. And when I say data, we're talking about basically traffic counts that the cities have done, and on the transit side, ridership numbers. We did a good job. I was kind of in a competition with Alameda CTC to see, who was submitting the most data back. Like I said, we did get pretty good response, but there were 3 jurisdictions in Contra Costa, 3 of our larger jurisdictions, I shall say, that we haven't heard from. And I was really hoping we might be able to hear from them because I'm assuming they probably have some good traffic data that we could use. And I don't like to call people out, but since Stephanie has already called out some jurisdictions today, it is Concord, Richmond, and Walnut Creek. You know, they're 3 kind of core big cities that we're hoping may have some data.
Hey, Matt, have you reached out to Smadar yet?
It was Steve Waymeyer that we tried to contact the city engineers. So we contacted Steve, and if you could follow, or if you think going to Smadar would be better, I could do that.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do that. And
Thank you.
then for
Who did it go
Concord-
in Concord?
Yeah, we have him as an interim city engineer, Bruce Davis. I don't know him.
Yeah, I don't know. Can you forward it to
I'll
me?
follow up.
I'll make sure.
And for Richmond, I think I saw Luz from Richmond in the room. There's a new city engineer there as well. We normally work with, I think, Tawfiq, or actually we sent it to Joe Leach, the Public Works Director. So any follow-up there would be great. If you can track that down, or contact me and I'll send it to someone else. So either way.
This is for network?
No, this is for data, existing traffic data, traffic counts. We just started the network review. But we were hoping to get all the data by last month. So let's see. The land use as I mentioned, we're doing the network review as of this week. The land use review will follow, but that's for Alameda County only. You may remember, some of you may remember, a few months ago we did a land use review as part of the action plan updates that we needed because we're using Plan Bay Area 2050. So that's what we are reviewing right now with Alameda County. So we're just going to use what we did for the action plan for this. So congratulations, you guys are done there. Unless you'd like to take another look at it, but we bugged you quite a lot a few months ago to do that. So we're not planning on following up again. So we will be sharing validation results, as I mentioned, probably this summer. That'll be at the screen line level. That's kind of where you look and can see how the model output compares with those traffic counts that we're asking for. And I should mention that where we do have gaps, if we aren't able to get data from you, those counts, if those 3 cities I mentioned or the other cities don't have the data, we are planning on using Streetlight as kind of a gap to fill those locations where we didn't get any existing data. Let's see. So model adoption will occur probably in early 2023 by both the CCTA and Alameda CTC boards. And then we will have user training, and that will be, it could be for city staff, but it'll most likely be for consultant staff because most cities don't have in-house modelers. And with this new activity-based platform, it's a bigger animal, and your consultants will, just like today, they're the ones running the models. They'll probably continue to do so. So we'll have training and ongoing technical support like we do now for your consultants or city staff. So I think that's all I have, but I'd be glad to take any questions. This was just a status update, and also serving as a reminder for the the various data collections and network reviews we're doing. So I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Matt. Any questions from committee members or comments? Please raise your hand or unmute yourself and speak up. I think I see Lynn's hand up.
I'm not a member, so I have to be as a general public asking a question. What exactly is the output that this particular model gives, since it's so different than what we've had before?
Everything. No, yeah, it outputs a lot more than we're used to getting. Right now, we're used to getting just kind of, we get roadway volumes is the primary output we get. We get vehicle hours of delay, and we do get VMT numbers. But what you get from an activity-based model is a much more fine grain look at the trips. So as we've kind of explained it in the past, whereas right now when you leave the house to go wherever you're going, kind of let's say you stop by a coffee shop, then you drop your kids off at daycare, and then you go to the office. Right now, our model is just looking at you going from home to the office. It's looking at your home-based work commute. It doesn't consider those other trips. So now the model will be considering all those linked trips that go on, your lunch trip while in the middle of your day while at the office. So things we've never been able to look at before, and it tracks all modes. Yeah, it's a much more fine-grained approach to modeling. And the zone system is finer grained, so you're presumably getting a better reaction from the model for the projects you're running through it, whether they be a transportation project or a land use project. Yeah, and I should say the VMT numbers should be more accurate.
Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments from committee members or questions? Don't see any hands. And my apologies. I think I forgot to ask for a written public comment on item 4B. So Christina, are there any written public comments for item 4B or 4C?
No, we've received none.
All right. Thank you.
Yes,
If
one
there's
comment.
anyone. Oh, yeah.
This is Matt, congratulations for getting it this far. And a person with a little bit of a vested interest in this, you guys may want to do a contest for the name.
I agree. I had proposed a name kind of last year, but it hasn't stuck. And that was the ALAC model, ALACC. But I'd like to have I don't want to call it the bi-county model forever or activity-based model or anything like that. I'd rather have it have a catchy name. So yeah, I will consider that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And
Maybe
feel free to shoot me emails if you got ideas.
Maybe we can agendize it for the next TCC or a future one, as that is the bureaucratic way. Are there any, before we move on, are there any members of the public that would like to speak on item 4B or 4C? Do we have anyone in the queue, Christina?
No, we haven't received any.
All right, thank you very much. If there are no other comments on this from committee members or questions, we'll go ahead and move on to item 4D, which is approval to release proposed One Bay Area Grant Cycle 3 program and call for projects. And I think, Mr. Hong, this is your show, right? Or Mr. Clark?
I will share the with Colin here. John Wong, Director of Planning. Nice to see all of you, and thank you for agendizing this item for today. So today we're asking for your approval to request the Authority Board to approve the release of the proposed OBAC 3 program and call for projects. So hopefully you read through the whole staff report and all attachment into G. So with that, we'll answer any questions you may have. I'm just kidding. We have a short slide deck. I'm glad to see some smiling faces there.
I laughed. Sorry, you couldn't see me.
We have a short slide deck. Some of this stuff you've seen before on a higher level. We presented to the CCC back in I want to say January. And since then, we've been refining the program and the policy more, and we've been meeting at the RTPC levels, at the technical and the policy level, and trying to vet the proposed program, and we receive a lot of feedback through the process. And then here today, we've compiled everything, and hopefully what we've drafted is amicable to this coordinating committee and also the board. So a little bit of background, again, this is OBAG Cycle 3, One Bay Area Grant Cycle 3, is SCP CMAQ funding. And the SCP CMAQ funding is 60-40% at the regional, at the Bay Area level. So I think 60% of the funds is STP and 40% is CMAQ funding. So kind of keep that in the back of your mind, because we're going to revisit that a little bit later on in the presentation. So the total Bay Area region receives, I think 680 million total. So the county and local programs is roughly 340 millions. Keep in mind the regional program is MTC led. So MTC is still developing that regional program. So there are, and there will be funding available to all the jurisdictions through those regional programs once they're developed. For CCTA specifically, we're looking at about $47 million of the targeted funds. Going back to the reason of the MTC program, MTC has set aside $25 million in Safe Route to School projects, and that can include infrastructure and the non-infrastructure also. This is funding for a 4-year program, federal fiscal year program from 22-23 to 25-26, and a lot of the projects that MTC has developed in their guidelines in the attachment aligns with the Plan Bay Area 2050 strategies. Next slide, please. So for the regional program, I didn't read the slide closely enough. Okay, so when we're continuing on the regional wide criteria, MTC is looking at focusing money on priority development areas and community concern, or the new terminology is equity priority communities, and they would like the 70% of the investment, of the total investment, directed to these locations. And MTC is also advocating projects that are focused on active transportation as well as Safe Route to School. And also all the project sponsors are required to comply with a whole list of requirements that's in one of the attachments from MTC, which includes housing, complete streets, safety plans, local road safety plans, which Colin's going to mention later, and also a certified pavement management system. Now to the county-wide program. As we mentioned back in January, we're looking at splitting the program into 2 pots of money, or 2 different types of projects. We're off the top, CCTA as the planning agency will receive roughly $1 million a year. So it comes up to about $4.087 million over a 4-year period. And the nomination amount for the county local programs is $56.7 million. Again, there's 2 terminologies which you're probably familiar by now. The target amount of $47 million and the nomination amount of $56 million. So 56 is roughly 120% of the $47 million actual. MTC is not allowing CCTA to allocate funding by formula. Even at the MTC level, they can't allocate money by formula. They can't even set aside money by formula like they used to do. However, they can set targets. And they've set targets for how much they want to fund for Safe Route to School. Next slide. So these criteria are directly from MTC. The eligibility, deliverability, community support, and prioritization criteria is directly from MTC, which we are taking into and incorporating into our application process. Next slide. Again, these are straight from MTC also. Eligibility, the evaluation of projects against regional criteria. So this is where the scoring comes into play, whereas once all the projects get submitted to MTC, MTC will consider the scoring from the CCTA as making up 75% or 75 points of their total scoring of 100 points. So they'll weigh a 75-25. Once you get to the MTC level, there's another layer of prioritization at the MTC level. If you read one of the MTC report or policy, there's an additional 10 points for CMAQ funding. So there's a process there that MTC goes through to determine if projects are CMAQ eligible or not. And if the projects are, then the project actually gets assigned by MTC an additional 10 points. Overall, again, MTC is really targeting PDA and setting and looking at about investing $25 million in Safe Route to School and a total of $200 million in the bike ped projects. And as far as our CCTA Contra Costa County program, I mentioned earlier, half of the funding will be going to Smart Signals project, and the other half will be Active Transportation and Safety, ATS. I'll talk about the Smart Signals project, which will be a CCTA sponsored project. And I've met with many of the cities so far. I think I have maybe one or two more cities left, and really laying out what that project is about and looking at what the needs are at the city level. And for that project, CCTA is looking at the city sponsor providing the match of 11.47%. As far as the Active Transportation and Safety, that's the call for project. And it'll be a competitive process. And the projects that the jurisdiction will be proposing can be part of the adopted 2018 bike ped plan and others adopted locally. So we realize that there are other projects that aren't identified in that 2018 plan. So we're open to consider definitely other projects. Next slide. So again, the next couple of slides is about the Smart Signals project. It's essentially looking at integrating the signal system throughout the county, across jurisdictions. So we're looking at the 4 subregions and interconnecting the signals on major corridors, which is include regional routes of significance and other major arterial that the city or the jurisdiction have identified. We're looking at the theme of safety and Vision Zero. We're basically trying to reduce collisions between vehicles and pedestrian and bicyclists. At the same time, looking at improving mobility. And some of the elements that we're looking at starts with your basic upgrading of signal controllers, all the way up to installing fiber communications and everything in between, including CCTV cameras, deployment of video detection, and EVP, TSP, and so forth. And then hopefully in the total project, if we were going to do everything we wanted to do countywide, it'll be roughly in the $100 million. That's what our estimate was. And we know that we don't have that type of money right now, so we're going to at least start the first phase with this $24 million from OVAC 3. Next slide. This is kind of what I was heading towards, the signal system, upgrading signal controllers and all the equipment. I think where that red line is probably what we're looking at. But when we met with different cities, we find out that different cities are at different stages of the project. So for instance, like Concord is way ahead of the game, in San Ramon also, and other cities, Walnut Creek and so forth. So depending on where cities are with their equipment, we'll be able to update or install or deploy more advanced equipment. Next slide. So this gives you a rough idea of what we're looking at. So each city or each jurisdiction that we met with, we've got to share this map. This is the second map. The first map actually includes roughly 750 traffic signals. So this is what we're narrowing it down to, and we're working off of this map. And again, we do have detailed maps for each city and each town and each unincorporated county. Next slide. Again, this kind of sums up the project, looking at improving safety, mobility, and really setting the stage for future smart corridors. Next slide. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Colin. I can answer questions now about the smart signals or wait till the end, whatever you prefer.
Any comments or questions from committee members on the smart signals portion of the presentation?
I have a question, although do cut me off if this is going to be addressed in the latter part by Colin. And this is kind of a high level question. And I guess to summarize it is, how much of a or how much of a focus, and not necessarily just with this first round of OVAC 3 funding, but how much of a focus as far as this overall program will be on essentially transit capacity and throughput. And to explain what I mean with all these signal, with the signal upgrades, I'm seeing this as basically adding vehicular capacity to our roadway system. So, more cars. And, here in Walnut Creek, we're kind of moved past that where we're not adding capacity, and it's more, at least for, individual vehicles. And, I see the transit priority signaling is in there. But of course, if the bus is stuck in the same traffic as all the cars, the traffic signal doesn't necessarily make that much of a difference, as opposed to if they have like a separate lane, or if they're able to, I forget what it's called, but where they can at least jump around the signal, where they get the first green ahead of everybody else or something off from the far right. And I'm just wondering, is in the long run, is that a significant goal of this, or is this just more technology for cars?
Thanks for the question, Andrew. I wouldn't classify it as just technology for cars. There may be or may not be capacity increasing as a result of this, but really we're setting I would want to say that we're setting the baseline on infrastructure to enable future operations improvements. Maybe you're talking about a dedicated bus BRT lane at some major roadways. I think that's a little bit further down, probably different in a different discussion than the smart signals project itself, but they are related. And at some point, we can certainly do a better job of kind of tying the two together. But I think mobility for the roadways, hopefully improve mobility for the transit also, as far as the one that's on the roadway.
I mean, I would posit that it won't. People aren't going to get on a bus until it's easier than getting in their car. But I see other hands up, so I don't want to drag it on here.
I'm not sure who was next, either Leah or Saravana.
My comment builds off of Andy's, so I'm going to jump in, Saravana. And I have other comments, more detailed comments that I'll go into on the materials in the packet. But, you know, I know that even like this proposal for the smart signal still has to be funded or ranked by MTC. And I think what I'm hearing from Andy and what I'm experiencing as I'm reading the material that's presented is it does seem very auto-focused. And I think that if we want to be successful in getting the smart signals funding, I think we have to, you know, just take a step back and look at how this information is presented. And just with the slide that's up, you know, with the goals, you know, your third goal is give signal priority to transit and people walking and biking. Well, that's a big deal for MTC. And having that goal be third, you know, whether it's just kind of like, I don't think we're emphasizing what the potential funders want to hear. And I think partly that's because this really isn't a strong ped bike transit proposal, but I think it could be. And I think that we need to relook at this with that focus. So that was more of a comment than a question, but I've got questions later.
I'm sure you do. Thanks, Lane, for the comment. And I understand what you're talking about. I mean, those goals aren't listed in any kind of order. They're just listed. Again, these are great comments. Again, I did mention before, but if the board approved this program or the way our approach is, we're going to have roughly 2 to 3 months to develop the program. We have to complete the application, the same application that MTC requires. So in the narrative, we can address more the benefit for transit and pedestrian and bicyclists. To your point, again, I don't think the signals, even though perception wise it may see like it's benefit, maybe seen like it's benefit the motorists and the vehicles, but I think there's much more than that benefit than that. But we thank you for the comment, and we'll take that into consideration as we're developing the application itself.
So my comment is kind of in the line of what Leah said, and also somewhat touching upon what Andrew mentioned. You know, it's stepping back. It's a good idea that you split it and carved out for a county-wide smart signal network. And because only at the CCTA level you can do this county-wide aspect, and it is going to be more efficient rather than, you know, individually people doing it. Sorry, I missed the meeting with our folks yesterday. And you may have heard how far ahead on various different projects Concord is, and we do support this, you know, the smart signal program. So having said that, I believe that this is going to be the baseline, and even though it may not look like it is as, you know, transit supportive, but you can add some Q-jump lanes here and there, and where are maybe in your language, and make it more transit supportive truly. Again, you know, from the safety point of view for all modes, I think this is the first step. So probably if you project that, it may respond to people with concerns on how other modes are supported better. But you know, the bigger question is, how is MTC reacting? Because they are looking at more on, I know the MTC has a parallel wing on, you know, the operations team is fully on this. right? But this is OBAG, STPC MAC, and this is all about the VMT reduction and supporting the land use of the disadvantaged communities in terms of and the PDAs and so how is this? I mean, because you're spending a lot of time and energy in it, and you want it to be really competitive. And if they say that 70% of the funding needs to be supporting PDAs, and how is this going to be ranked? And they do have other categories which we commented upon, like add more categories to expand opportunities here. But if this is on the multimodal category, probably that will weigh in. But you may want to be certain about it, right? So just want to know whether you had any conversation with MTC.
Thanks, Sarah Vaughn. Oh yeah, I failed to mention that one of the criteria that we looked at was that the route is within the PDA, between a PDA, going to and from a PDA, or connecting PDA. So that was one of the criteria, and a lot of the routes of regional significance does meet that criteria. And of course, we didn't meet with MTC. You don't think we wouldn't when we did talk to them multiple times, and as recent as last Friday, right? It was like last Friday. So anyways,
or an hour ago, depending on
or an hour ago.
No, I completely understand. It's not that this is the cycle, but this particular project is what.
Oh yeah. No. We did. That's one of the first things that we did. We spoke with MTC, vetted the idea, explained to them what it is, what we're trying to do out of the Smart Signal project, and the same thing that we presented to you is the same thing we presented to MTC. And last Friday we had a meeting with MTC staff, and share with them what our policy, what our program is going to be, and they were very receptive to it. So that gives us confidence that it will compete well once we elevate it up to the regional level. And you're right, it's a different type of project, and we're probably the only county that's really proposing these types. I know I don't know what other projects other jurisdictions are looking at, but to answer your question succinctly, yes, we had a lot of discussion with MTC staff at multiple levels, so they are aware of what's coming down the pipeline.
Sounds good. That's good.
Andrew?
Yeah, if I may, I'm actually a little more concerned now. I mean, I'll be honest, this just seems like yet another program of spending millions and millions of dollars for increasing automobile capacity. And it's like, well, and maybe in the future we can do some extra stuff with transit that'll tie into this. To me, and especially considering that this is OBAG funding, I understand the concept about how this is kind of the backbone, if you will, of this, to build upon for a number of things into the future. But as of right now, what we're asking money for is, just traffic signals, which, we can kind of greenwash our project description, but it still seems an awful lot like basically just adding capacity for automobiles, as opposed to if this was incorporated at this phase, things such as queue jump lanes. That was actually what I was trying to remember the name for. If you've got, like, in addition to smart signals, well, on San Pablo Avenue, we're going to be doing some queue jump lanes so the 72 can zip on through, and that'll actually, also address communities of concern, et cetera, or, East County feeding into eBART or the Ignacio Valley corridor, things like that, of getting, specific things for, say, bus transit as part of this. To me, then that speaks to more than just, well, we're increasing capacity for automobile throughput. And I think that's important. And I would imagine MTC would care about that as well.
So Andrew, just a follow-up question. Queue jump lane, queue jump, that's different than transit signal priority? Yeah,
it allows, like, for example, just to use as a simple example, Ignacio Valley Road, and I'm using this because it's a Walnut Creek example. and so I'm familiar with it. Ignacio Valley Road coming down off the hill from out of Concord. There's a very long red light at Oak Grove Road, and consequently, the traffic going westbound in the morning backs up a very long way up the hill. And there's the longest right turn lane you'll ever see in your life that feeds onto Oak Grove Road, so people don't have to wait for that traffic signal so long. If at the very end of that right turn lane, right as you get to Oak Grove Road, where there's the very long red light, there was a single spot for a bus to be able to go straight from that right turn lane, and the smart signal was programmed in a way that it knew when the bus is there, and it had a special bus signal that allowed the bus to jump ahead of the line at that point, the queue jump, and get ahead of, so to drive around that big long line of traffic and even get the first green. That's a queue jump lane. That's an example of something. And obviously there you're not, there's not so much the issue of that's not in a PDA, and although it connects PDAs, and it's not a community of concern right there, although it does serve. But, as an example, okay, there is something that's a signal plus something that's going to be that would, I would assume, attract people to the express bus routes that run on that road that right now just have to sit in the same traffic as the cars.
Okay, well, thanks for explaining that and clarifying what that is. And again, that's the purpose of why we're meeting with individual cities. I mean, I met with Walnut Creek staff, and that never came up, and they were enthusiastic with this project. But definitely, if that's something that Walnut Creek wants, we certainly can include that if the infrastructure is there.
I'm not trying to advocate right now for a queue jump lane at Oak Grove Road. I'm just using that as an example to explain what a queue jump lane is. I mean, that's why in my first, prior to that, my first example was San Pablo Avenue. Just that sort of thing. Obviously there's a lot of benefits to smart signals and, et cetera, but from well, I've said my piece. I don't want to drag this on.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thanks everyone for the comments. John, do you want to move on to Colin's portion of the presentation?
Yeah, so okay, Colin, thanks.
Sure, so motion sensors. Turning the lights back on. So this slide shows some project examples when it comes to the call for projects. Other 50% portion of the OBAG 3 program. And in terms of the 10 years of analysis that CCTA did with the help of local agencies over the last couple of years, these are the top most common collision types that were identified as part of the Vision Zero effort countywide. And so these are the types of projects or areas that might score well on the ATS portion of the program funding. And I'll provide some more context. So in terms of eligible applicants, each of the cities and towns, BART, and bus and other transit agencies, in addition to the Park District, the health services, and other special districts such as the Water District, serving as a co-sponsor. The required match of 11.47, which was mentioned previously, and the minimum grant amount being $500,000 in order to make it worth it, so to speak, in terms of the paperwork that's required for being able to use federal funds. Maximum 2 projects per jurisdiction, with the county being allowed up to 4, and the Safe Routes to School and the federated secondary projects, rural, non-urban roadways would count towards the number of applications. So the incentive is to bundle projects across jurisdictions, but also even within jurisdictions. And so John mentioned the housing and transportation policies that MTC has their list of criteria we need to comply with in order to be competitive on the 9-county region level. And I'll talk about local road safety plans specifically in just a minute. But before that, other eligible project types include people walking, biking, rolling, including micromobility, repaving projects that are particularly scoped as complete streets projects, and addressing Americans with Disabilities Act, accessibility, compliance, roundabouts, and other safety-oriented projects that also at the same time reduce air pollutants, GHG emissions, severity of each collision, fatalities and severe injuries in terms of moving toward countywide Vision Zero. And in the case of MTC, they've identified in 2020 a goal target date of 2030 to achieve Vision Zero. And so you can imagine the types of projects that we're going to need to put forward countywide in order to be able to also compete at the regional level, 9 counties. So we've talked about the PDAs. The focus is to be on infrastructure projects in particular. However, Safe Routes to School programs are the kind of exception to that policy. And if design is included in the proposal, construction would also be included in the minimum 500K application. Projects that are adopted in the community-based transportation plans or a local plan or the countywide bike and ped plan will score well and compete better at the regional level. And so the project doesn't inherently need to be in a local road safety plan. However, I'll explain this more on the next slide, but the local road safety plan needs to be adopted by December 31st of 2023, and that's for both OBAG 3 from an MTC perspective and HCIP 11 from a Caltrans perspective for the Highway Safety Improvement Program. And so I'll provide an example here in terms of complete streets. So if there's $1 million project, 250K of it is bike ped focused. All of the bike peds can be funded with the minimum application of 500K and 250K of the 750K towards the pavement would be eligible. So it would be the 750 pavement eligible for the Complete Streets project. We can walk through the application form if people are interested. The proposal is to have a workshop in June so that we can kind of dive into the weeds and go step by step into more detail and get questions and answers and talk through it some more. I have the online version that I can share here in just a moment, but before that, this local road safety plan requirement from MTC and Caltrans, just showing a general schedule here. So roughly in the year 2020 is when Caltrans had awarded grants to many of the agencies in Contra Costa. I think there's 4 agencies that did not receive grant funding from Caltrans before Caltrans stopped accepting grant applications in October of 2021. But other than that, most jurisdictions did receive grant funds from Caltrans and are moving forward in adopting a local road safety plan and hopefully including a project list as part of that can help inform the OBAG 3 and future calls for projects. The applications for OBAG 3 for ATS would be due July 15th. And so the plan would need to be adopted by December 31st of 2023. However, the incentive obviously is to have a project list long before that to be able to compete for OBAG 3 funds. Coming back to the implementation schedule, the first time that funds would be eligible for use would be 2023, October of 2023, which would be the the beginning of the federal fiscal year for the 4-year OBAG process. And I think the very latest that a jurisdiction or project sponsor would be able to obligate federal funds would be January 31st of 2027. So one thing that I want to call attention to is the scoring sheet that is included in the packet, so that each of the applicants is familiar with the proposed ranking criteria, with the 75 points that go toward the countywide score, and then MTC would get the final 25 points in addition to the 10 points that John mentioned for CMAQ funding consideration. So moving over to the online application. So the intent of developing this in an online format using Microsoft Forms was, number one, to be able to have an easy Excel spreadsheet as an export for ongoing program monitoring, and to hopefully ease the burden on local agencies in responding to requests for information over time. So the intent is to make this as easy as possible moving forward, and to reduce the amount of time that's required to coordinate with local agencies. In terms of the application, the complete street checklist that was just updated by MTC as part of a recent effort with the Regional Active Transportation Plan, that is included as an attachment to your packet here, and would be included in the application that gets submitted through this online form. And I don't really want to walk through this whole thing right now. That's more probably for the workshop and when we have specific questions. But Chair Stamps, I'll kick it back over to you.
Thanks very much, Colin. Are there any questions on Colin's portion of the presentation or comments from committee members? Don't see any. Oh, I see Andrew.
Celestine, or?
Oh yeah, that's me. I'm not Andrew.
Oh, sorry. For some reason. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Celestine.
No problem. Yeah, thanks, John and Colin, for being so thoughtful and including as many types of projects and responding to our input for OBAG. So we really appreciate it. And I had a few questions on the application. So for example, we talked about the local road safety plan. And for BART as a transit agency, it's not really relevant for us, but we do have FHWA funds that we transfer to FTA. And is there anything that is relevant to that? Because we have FHWA funds that we transfer over. How would you advise on that?
So is your question, something is that whether BART needs a local road safety plan? If that's the question, let's no.
Okay. Yeah, so we don't need to comply by any of those requirements.
No.
Okay, great. And my other question is about the scoring, because you mentioned that MTC can give another 10 points for regional air quality improvement. So then technically you can receive 110 points?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so it's not listed here.
Yeah,
well, like a bonus.
Oh, because that's at the MCC level. Yeah, you're right. You're right. We actually, in all transparency, we just got off the phone with MCC like an hour before this meeting to clarify it. So it is 75. If your project was scored a perfect 75 points from the county prioritization, we submit to MTC, and MTC gives you a maximum 25 points, and you qualify for the CMAQ funding. That's 110 points, yes. And then that MTC will prioritize those money first.
Because it's the maximum points.
Yes.
Okay, and it actually, you do have like 35 points in the PDF because there are 3 categories that have 10 points, just so you know. Right?
We do, yes. That's the MGC portion, exactly. Thank you.
Yeah. Great. I think those are all my questions right now.
Thank you, Celestine, not Andrew. Leah, is your hand up?
Yes, it is. So I have a few questions, comments. So under eligible agencies, RTPCs aren't listed. Is there a reason for that, or can we have RTPCs included as eligible agencies for applying?
That's a great question. As far as I understand it from MTC's perspective, they're using the eligibility list from Caltrans in terms of local public agencies that I think likely require a master agreement in place with Caltrans. So if there is one between the RTPC and Caltrans, then yes, that would be just fine. Otherwise, it'd be a co-sponsor.
WCTAC has received Caltrans funding in the past, so and we just got awarded funding, so it'll be a pretty current master funding agreement.
Yeah, I think Lay, to your question, just follow up on Colin's answer. Yeah, I know WCTAC is a little bit different than the other 3 RTPCs. And I'm aware that WCTAC does pursue funding on a regular basis. So yeah, as long as you have the master agreement with Caltrans, then yes.
Okay. And then another comment I heard was about the Safe Routes to School programs, and that there was in the presentation, there was a note saying that it would count as one of the county's projects. And I'm wondering, one of the 4 projects that the county can apply for. And I'm wondering, and maybe Luz can respond to this, but are there Safe Routes to School programs that cross RTPC boundaries? And if so, then the question goes back to the CCTA, is how would you handle that?
Well, I guess my question to you is, who would you think will be the project sponsor? Would it be the county, or?
Yeah.
The county can be the project sponsor.
Right, but so that would be one of the, like if there's a Safe Routes to School program that crosses our TPCs, then that would be one of the 4 projects that the county could sponsor.
I think we can look into that. That's probably a unique situation. It can be 2 different applications because it does cross RTPC boundaries. But we can look further into it and see how it pans out.
So if I could jump in on that comment real quick, and like Leah mentioned, Luz Gomez from our Health Services Department, County Health Services Department is on the call. And I think in the case of who would be the sponsor on a project like that, it would probably be the County Health Services Department, because, and I was going to bring this up later after everyone had a chance to comment, but now that we're talking about it, I'll go ahead and mention it. The County Health Services Department is contemplating extending or continuing a program that was previously funded by an OBAC cycle, a Safe Routes to School program. And again, Luz has all the details and specifics on the program, but it's something that was being contemplated. So Leah's already touched on it. I don't know if Colin or John, you want to talk about how non-infrastructure Safe Routes to School projects, factor into this as far as the maximum number of projects, or how it has to be competitive with infrastructure projects, being that it's not infrastructure. But that's something, again, that the county's contemplating. So I'll go ahead.
And to add on to Jamar's questions for you guys is also, how does the application process that's proposed here account for programs and not projects? Because there's a lot of cases here where it seems like a program wouldn't be able to score points.
So generally speaking, the application is encouraged to be bundled. And so if it's a project or multiple projects within an application or multiple projects in addition to a program as part of a single application, that's eligible. And that should be addressed in the guidelines.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm going to start with my list of questions then, because to me, it's not clear.
Okay,
So
before you go through your list, let me add this. So to your question about the county's application, right? I would just pick, if I was a county, I would just pick one or sub-region to apply it under, and just bundle it under one application.
right, but then potentially there's not a project that the county can sponsor under in that sub-region either. Like it.
Well, I think that's something that you really have to kind of work out, prioritize within your jurisdiction.
So I'm going to go through my list of questions then. So I'm using the page numbering that's in the packet, or that's part of the PDF. So I'm looking at page 68 of the PDF, and I don't know if of the agenda packet.
Oh.
I don't know if you want to call that up so people can see. But it talks about proximate access to a PDA, and that there's these definitions for approximate access to a PDA, but it seems to me that there's not a category that's clearly applicable to a program. And like, how could a program receive funding then?
70% of funds need to go towards PDAs or supporting PDAs.
So are you still on the subject of Safe Route to School? Or is something, another program?
Just in general, I mean, I don't know if somebody else has programs, but I mean, it's just something that I've noticed throughout when you look at the criteria or the questions, that if somebody was applying as part of a program, it's very hard to score points.
So besides Safe Route to School, what other programs are you thinking of?
I don't know if there are other programs, but.
Okay, so I know the Safe Route to School, the non-infrastructure, there is language from the MTC instructions specifically that says they will honor and continue those programs, right? So as far as the structure of our application for the active transportation and safety, yes, we do focus it more on the project, but the programs, you can apply for that.
So I guess my point is that you need to take the Safe Routes to School piece out of the project competition piece, because and I know we can't officially like say that we're giving money for a specific project, but the application doesn't jive with what the program is. And if we're gonna go through a process of submitting an application and then having people score these applications, I don't see how it could score very well with the current structure. And so, maybe you need a modified version of this application that can be used for program funding.
Or specifically Safe Route to School programs. Because I'm not hearing any other programs besides Safe Route to School.
Yeah, I can't judge what,
I
know that there's that one program. I don't know if there's others, but I just look at this and I'm kind of going, I don't see how they're going to score any points for a lot of these things if they're competing against projects.
Okay, but what I'm saying is that No, it's a good point, and I don't have a specific answer for you because it's kind of gray, and it's kind of gray point from the MTC point of view also. But I'm just referring back to their language and their policy where they will honor and continue programs. So with that
That's
said,
fine. That's
with that
fine.
said-
The language should be reflected in the grant application because it's not abundantly clear to somebody who's applying to these funds that it would be a competitive source of funding.
Okay, so first, we'll take a look at the application again to see where we can adjust it. But at the end of the day, the Safe Route to School, I can tell you now pretty confidently, if it's a outreach and education program that's existing already, it has a good chance of continuing. That's all I'm gonna say. But around, again, it might score lower the way that.
John,
that-
but that doesn't make me feel comfortable that, I mean, I think you have to pull it out somehow. Like just having one person say that isn't a way of guaranteeing.
I'm not guaranteeing it, Leah. No,
And I
I'm
know
not
you can't,
guaranteeing
but-
you anything. I'm just saying, we understand the situation and we understand the vagueness of the situation. And I don't have a specific answer for you now. That's why I said we're gonna go back and look at it. But those programs, as MT's policy dictate, and we're transferring it to our own policy, is that those programs will be continuous. I understand that they don't compete well with other projects. I understand that concept.
Okay, so moving on to page 69 of the packet. The very last sentence, it talks about that that something's going to be forwarded to each RTPC. It says any application to continue funding on ongoing commitment will be forwarded to each RTPC. And I think you just need to add something to clarify to what end. Why is it getting forwarded to that agency?
Okay, all right.
Page 70 of the packet, the purpose and needs section. I think
Okay.
it should include transit. You know, down in the second paragraph under purpose and need, it says, you know, will increase overall commuter travel times, delay greenhouse gas emissions, fuel consumption, but there's also a transit benefit.
Okay.
And then same page, goals of the project. Item number 2, optimize mobility. I think this should be clarified for who we're optimizing mobility for. Is it transit, bikes, and peds? Which I hope so.
For all.
I think that should be, there should be a prioritization. That if we're trying to get something funded by MTC, saying that we are equally prioritizing single occupant vehicles with transit and bikes and peds, I don't think that makes for a strong goal.
It's just more of the status quo.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So moving on to page 71 of the packet. Under figure 1, there's specific elements of the project include. It should list how this will help transit. It's buried in the second to last bullet, and this whole thing sounds very single occupant vehicle oriented. that was a mouthful, sorry.
All right, can you see the section again?
I'm on page 71 of the packet, and it's underneath what's called figure 1, and it starts out specific elements of the project include.
Okay, thanks.
And then in that same area under the second bullet there, it talks about each agencies to provide remote control at a central traffic management center. And I'm wondering how this will be handled for smaller cities with limited staff who, how will they be implementing these traffic centers?
What page is this?
I'm on page 71 of the packet. Under figure 1, the text underneath there's a list of bullets, and the second bullet says that it's going to upgrade advanced traffic management systems for each agency to provide remote control at a central traffic management center.
Right.
So my question is, how will this be handled for smaller cities who have limited staff? And it's creating a new, maintenance responsibility. So is that something that they're going to need to now cover as part of these signal upgrades?
No, not necessarily. I think those are just like a list of goals, right? Ultimate goals, right? It's just a list of.
It says specific elements of the project include.
Right. So again, each city is at different stages. So if a small city is not ready for that, then we're not going to be implementing that for the city.
Okay, so I think that language needs to reflect that.
Okay, thanks.
Moving on to page 72 of the packet. Under expected benefits, then there's a bullet, operational improvements. I think it should specify that the goal is to improve operations for transit as a priority.
Improve transit as a priority?
Yes.
Okay.
Leah, would you be willing to perhaps in that case also add bike and ped?
Absolutely.
Okay, yeah, so we're taking notes here, but maybe after the meeting, Leah. And
I can forward you my comments after.
Yeah, please, thank you.
Yeah.
In case we want to capture everything, all right?
Yeah. And then under safety benefits, again, this is sort of back to the presentation of things, is the first bullet under safety benefits is in some communities a very off-putting bullet about when you're involving law enforcement officials and crime incidences. And I don't think that that's the bullet to start with when you're talking about the safety benefits of this project. The first bullets do create an impression. And, my first impression was, when we're talking about, traffic enforcement and crime, and, there's communities that are especially sensitive to with this topic. And I think that's a red flag.
Okay. What page was that again? Sorry.
I'm on page 72 of the packet, the agenda packet.
All right.
And then same page down below where it says improvements in traffic management. And again, it talks about shared control and operations across jurisdictional, or to improve cross-jurisdictional traffic management. And I'm just wondering, how is this going to be funded in the long run? And as this gets refined further, we're going to need to come up with some strategy, you know, I'm not sure. I can see jurisdictions looking at this and saying, we can't afford to create an operation system, or we don't have the ongoing maintenance to fund, you know, I'm not a signal person, but I'm just thinking that these smaller jurisdictions, like sometimes they can be the choke points, and they're really important for when you have a corridor, but if they can't maintain the system, then you're just, you know, we're not helping, we're throwing money at something that doesn't get used. And we've already experienced part of this with San Pablo Avenue and the I-80 ICMA project, that our local jurisdictions have a hard time maintaining these signals.
Right, I completely understand that, yeah. And then keep in mind, this is just a list of all the expected benefits. It could be near term, could be long term. Again, it's not going to be CCTA or John Huang deciding these. It's going to be up to the stakeholders, all the cities. We're going to certainly engage every single city to represent on a working group that is going to flesh this out as the project moves along.
And then, well, I'm going to skip that one because I think you hit that. I'm moving on to page 77 of the agenda packet. Don't worry, everybody, I'm not going through 196 pages. Just kind of a common note that I would make throughout the application process or the application form is there's a lot of things that are referred to that aren't easily accessible. And so I'm looking at under example 3, there's a solid bullet, and then there's an open bullet where it says jurisdictions will submit to CCTA and an appendix project list in spreadsheet format. You know, I think that's going to need some additional explanation of what you're asking for. And
I got it. Okay. All right. Thanks.
then on page 77,
What's the name of the section, please?
a project site visit.
Okay.
It's interesting to have the 5-minute field video. You know, I think you should provide some more details about how you want that loaded up and what formats, and that's something brand new that we haven't done in the past with grant applications. And I just think some additional guidance would be helpful.
So immediately above that site visit section, it includes the clickable link to where the
Right. It says for GIS layers.
yes,
files.
It's a fair enough. We can clarify that you could use that same link for other things.
Yeah. And then moving on to the next section, transportation and safety program and policy requirements. Overall, I think that there's a lot of new requirements in this application without much guidance or time provided to implement them, because the application's going to come out in the next week and they're due 6 weeks later, and there's a lot of new things here that I don't know if our local jurisdictions have done before or been included. And I'm looking, for example, there's this one of these bullet points here. It's the third from the bottom of the page. Jurisdiction must have an adopted citywide or county policy resolution with intent to adopt the Muni Code reform ordinance that adopts the CCTA's model template, you know, where is that found? What's the time frame for that? Yeah,
Okay,
I just think,
all right,
We'll take a look.
yeah, we'll clarify it, all right.
yeah. Okay, I'm moving on to page 79 of the packet. Oh, I already covered that one. That's who are eligible, and just to add the RTPCs. Now I'm moving on to page 81 of the packet, and I'm nearing the end of my comments, everybody. Thank you for your patience. So on page 81, the top bullet there, it talks about a project that integrates multiple recommendations from the authority's Safe Systems Toolbox actions, yada, 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 yada. That should have a link in there. You know, where do we find out more information about that?
Okay,
And same page, lower on the page, I don't know how to, it's kind of the middle of the page. I just had it, and we've kind of brought this up before, or you've brought it up before, where it talks about the continuation of established safe routes to school programs that have been in operation 3 or more years. And I was just kind of curious why it's 3 or more years. And within this, like if they wanted to do some type of new sub-program, would that be eligible? Or does this just mean that they have to continue the status quo?
I'm gonna double check on this later, but that might be just directly from MTC. You know what the origin of this is that like similar to this county, other counties have had these non-infrastructure safe route to school program. It's not just Contra Costa. So MTC's attempt to accommodate those projects. That's really what the intent is. MTC wants to continue those funding those projects. But I'll double check to see what the three years or whatever it is came from.
Yeah, and just that, like, what does that mean in terms of, you know, times change, and, you know, there's new safe routes to school programs that seem appropriate. So does that just, like, within the safe routes to school program category, are they allowed to change their individual, like, I'll call them sub-programs, or would that be prohibited?
I think that's a program level question, and if you want to continue, this is my response to your question. If you want to continue just a general non-infrastructure program, you just state it as so, and if you make any changes within that program, that's your purview.
Okay. So I am jumping ahead to page 85 of the packet. It's 4.0 application form. And just as thinking about, you know, there's all different types of people who look at these applications. There's the engineer types, there's the planner types, there's, you know, whoever types. I don't know what an e-builder number is, and if that's a required thing, or
You don't?
I don't, sorry.
Okay. We'll either take that out or clarify it. All right.
Okay, thanks. So same page, down at the bottom, under the category competitiveness, region-wide screening criteria. And the question is, to which extent will the final scope cost percentage be matched by the applicant or project sponsor? I guess, and this applies to some of these other questions. They just kind of seem wordy. Like, are you asking for a percentage? And if we're just asking for a percentage here, can't we just say that? Otherwise, I could see somebody not familiar with this writing a little essay response.
Sure, this particular row was deleted because it's duplicative of where it's better defined on the scoring sheet.
Okay,
So
great.
It's already been addressed. Thank you.
Okay. And believe it or not, I think I'm at the end. I have one more on page 87. It's my last one. Eligibility screening criteria. And again, this kind of goes back to my question, if this is the screening criteria, how would this work for a Safe Routes to School program?
And which eligibility screening criteria section are you looking at?
Oh, federal performance goals.
Okay.
And then also thinking about the people who are writing this and the people who have to review it. For several of these sections, it says, if you check the box above, then you have to please describe. I think putting some maximum space or word number would be helpful so that you knew how much effort you needed to put into just providing descriptions to the boxes checked above.
I think we'll take that into consideration, but that might be restricting, folks who might need more narrative to explain that. I just want to bring that up. But I understand.
Yeah, there's a lot of these, but you could end up with a very long submittal if like maybe if you don't want to provide some. I would suggest providing some guidance, like briefly, or in 1 or 2 sentences, or in 1 or 2 paragraphs, or something, so that.
Yeah, briefly is very subjective, but okay. All right.
All right, so I'm done. Thank you for your patience.
No, we really appreciate your comments and certainly forward those to us, please, Leah. Thank you.
Will do.
Thank you, Leah. Saravana, do you still have your hand up?
Yes. If John, are you open for some high-level questions?
Yes, give
Okay.
it to me.
All right, just checking. So going back to the initial presentation you had, MTC's regional program, we were talking about the county program and MTC's regional program. Something you mentioned caught my attention, which is like now the jurisdictions can directly apply for the MTC regional program.
Historically, that's been my understanding.
Okay.
Because MTC program is exactly what it is. MTC will come up with their own program. They might be focusing on additional bike and ped projects. They might be coming up with their own. I have no idea what it can be, but they can do their own call for projects for the regional programs also. I have to look back at OVAC 2 and 1 to see what regional programs there were, but I'm certainly there were regional programs. So this is a county and local program.
Right. That I understand, having some knowledge about that, I thought the MTC regional program, they typically, use it for the regional projects. But if it is open for the cities to, seek funding from, it'll be good to know, what kind of projects and things like that, right? So that's one. Then other one is the priority production areas. And I couldn't find more information on it. I was trying to see whether Concord has any product, the PPA is identified. So what's with that? Because that is one of the eligibility criteria too, right? So
Did you click on MTC's link and you still there was nothing in Concord?
actually there was no map. It is all like, and it came up with, it's a pilot phase, but then again, there is 190 PPAs across the region identified. So these are the only specifics I could
Okay.
get. So it'll be good to know if any are within, Contra Costa, of course, Concord, identified by MTC. And it looks like it is similar to PDA that the cities should nominate, but I think it's easy to get it from there rather than I'm finding out from our folks, I guess, because
I'm confirming what you're saying because I'm looking at the map right now and it says for some of the areas in Concord NA. So I don't know, I guess MTC that would be who to follow up with on that.
If you could send me the link, that would be helpful. At least that.
It's in the application form.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So if you do like a control F for priority production area,
okay,
that's where the clickable link is.
Sure. Okay. So now going back to our comments that I sent yesterday. It is a high level comment still. I think we touched upon the smart signals, which we support. I said that it is about the programs, the funding categories. Right now we have the ATS and then the smart signal, right? And knowing that MPC is anticipating it does look really possible that more funding will come from federal act, and it is very likely if we adopt a funding framework, MTC will use the same thing for the new funding administration as well. So for the future expected funding. So in that context, probably we should be proactive in having a little bit more broader funding categories. And the MTC had in their original resolution from January, they had the multimodal, there was something related to climate and environment. And it's, so basically it's more on the operation side too, but it was not clear how the PDA aspect will be tied down in that. So it may be worth looking into at having a flexible framework. I know we have spent a lot of time on developing the two funding categories, and it is really fleshed out, but it is good to have that flexibility looking, being proactive. I'll stop there.
Definitely appreciate the comment.
Thank you, Sir Ivana. Are there any other members with questions or comments? I don't see any hands up. So I would assume everybody is good.
Chair Stamp,
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Luz, please go ahead. My apologies. Luz.
Well, I'm
Thank you,
technically
Jonathan.
not a member, so I was waiting for the opportunity to raise my hand as a non-member and to share a comment and a couple questions. But first of all, I want to introduce myself for those of you who don't know me. My name is Luz Gomez, and I manage the Building Healthy Communities program for Contra Costa Public Health. I also want to thank all of you because I think the work that you do is so important to keep our communities safe. So on behalf of Public Health, thank you. So our program provides safe routes to school programming throughout the county, but we also do other built environment kind of work where we provide the public health perspective to local jurisdictions that are in the process of doing planning, including general plans, Vision Zero plan, Safe Routes to School Master Plan in San Pablo, for example, county's active transportation plan. It's been really rewarding to have a chance to provide like that public health perspective into these plans, and that's part of what we do. And of course, as you know, we're seeing this huge increase in bike and pedestrian fatalities and injuries with the pandemic. And it seems like the time is right to do more prevention. And this is definitely a concern for public health. We were fortunate to get a previous OBAG round fund grant in partnership with WCTAC and County Public Health, but we were only funded to provide services in West County. And what that does, what we've been doing is working with all the high schools in West County Unified to incentivize and get young kids excited about using alternative forms of transportation safely, but not only doing bike and pedestrian safety education, but also helping them to identify the barriers that keep them from being able to use alternative modes of transportation. We also do some advocacy and education with policy and decision makers. Hopefully we get more funding to get the projects that we all want to see happen. So as the county's public health agency, we already work with the most vulnerable communities throughout the county, and we feel we're kind of uniquely positioned. We have like this niche of being like we already have connections with multiple school districts and with the communities that have been historically marginalized. So leading to this OBAG question, I want to thank Leah for kind of keying up some of the questions that I had related to the funding. I definitely had a question about, if the county has up to 4 projects to propose, would this one be one? And perhaps this warrants like a separate conversation just to clarify how it is that we could potentially be eligible. And what I would like to propose and kind of put out there as an idea is that while we currently have funding to do West County work through the former OBAG funds, we would love to be able to expand and do that countywide and be a resource to all of you. And so with that, I guess I would love to engage in a dialogue, but I know this is public comment and we may not be able to do too much of that, but I'm just curious about what you guys might think about this idea of maybe potentially even if it could be done as a set aside of the funds to go specifically for a program like ours. That would be pretty cool. But I don't know if that's doable. And so I'm throwing it out there as an idea. I would love to see that happen. And again, I would love for us and my program to be a resource to everybody countywide. And if anybody had questions and if we can engage in it back and forth, happy to interact a little more, but I don't know if that's okay. And thank you so much for your time and your attention today.
Thank you, Luz. I don't know, John or Colin, if you wanted to react to that at all.
Well, that's the first time I heard set aside. That is a possibility. We can have offline discussion.
Okay, great. Thank you. Why don't I go ahead and officially open it up to any members of the public? Christina, do we have any written public comment on this item?
No, we don't. However, I did want to bring something up. Considering how long the meeting has gone, 2 of our members have dropped off, so we no longer have a quorum to make a vote on anything on the agenda. We definitely can continue discussing these items. We just can't move forward with a vote. So the items on the agenda right now will need to move forward to next month. So they'll be agendized for next month. And at that time, if we have a quorum, we can move forward with a vote.
Okay, thank you for the update, Christina. So that brings up an interesting question. John, maybe you can help us out with this, since the OBAG item in particular needs to go to the planning committee on the 4th. How should we handle this procedurally?
Yeah, well, just in hindsight, it probably would have been good if we knew this like before, like, trying to give us the heads up that the time was running out or something. But anyways, we're slated to take it to the PC right now. It delays the whole process. We have to take it back to TCC again. So it's gonna push everything back a month, and that's just a month less for applicants to submit their projects the way it sits now. Again, it would have been nice to know this probably half an hour ago.
Does someone want to give a call to some of the people that dropped off to see if
I have called many of our members, and there is nobody available to hop back on the call.
Right, and we couldn't call people that have not been participating just to vote. That wouldn't be appropriate. And also, we didn't know when people were dropped off. I mean, Christina's been monitoring who's been leaving, but we can't make them stay. So that's difficult to do.
Just curious, what was the meeting? What was the end, like official end date? End time?
There's no end. Yeah, so TCC traditionally goes on. I mean, just like all our public meetings, TCC, APC, PC board meeting, it goes on as long as there are discussion items or discussions to be had. So I think the appropriate thing, maybe the people who are leaving would call their alternate to step in, but maybe that was not doable. And I know some of them were already alternates for the primary that presented themselves, that were present today. So I'm not sure that was gonna work anyway. So
can we convene a special?
I defer to the chair and staff on this one because.
So my item can wait. I think your OVAC item, yeah, chair stamps. I don't know. There were also some questions and comments from the group. I will defer to you guys. You want to see this again next month to continue the conversation. Yeah, that's to the chair's discretion.
Could we convene a special meeting sometime in the next couple of weeks just to vote on this item so that it could advance as soon as possible? Maybe that's something to think about over the next couple of days so that we don't hold the schedule up or hold it up as less as we possibly can.
Christina, maybe
that's fine.
We can certainly try. The only struggle with holding a special meeting is trying to get enough members to be able to make
Sure.
a specific date. So what I can do is I can send out a doodle poll and see if we can get a consensus on at least a quorum that can make a meeting in that time, and then I can get back to you.
Okay, that would be great. Thank you, Christina and Stephanie. I apologize too. I should have been keeping an eye on it as well as the clock, but knowing our quorum was tenuous to begin with. So I apologize for not picking up my end on that. But why don't we go ahead and see if we can try to convene a special meeting specifically for this item. And thank you, Stephanie, for letting us know that your items could hold over until next meeting. We'll push those till then. We're well past 2 hours on this agenda. So let's move on.
Actually, Andy has a hand up. So let us address.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Vice
thank
Chair.
you. I'll keep this very brief. I just, for the benefit of John and Colin, I'm not really ready to vote to recommend approval of this at this point until we see. I know at least myself and Leah and Zaravana provided some pretty significant comments, and I wasn't hearing any opposition from the other members of the TCC. So I would ask that some of that be addressed before it actually comes back to us for a vote.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you for that. I think we can still try to convene that special meeting if John and Colin, you think that maybe when we have that special meeting, you could have updates to those comments and questions by then, if that's possible.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
we'll try, but I mean, that the process is that, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Well, I guess, John, I think question to you, if we were to convene a special meeting, it would be in a week or two, possibly. Otherwise, may as well just do the next month. Would you guys be ready, or you rather just do, to not bother with the doodle and everything? Would your preference be go next month or try to put something together in the next 2 weeks? But then would you guys be ready to address all the comments that have been shared? So that I defer to you guys on the timeline of things, because there's no point bugging people with doodle and then it's not ready, I guess.
There's 19 participants in this meeting, right? There's somebody.
It sounds like there's someone in the waiting room for quorum potentially.
Well, it sounded like Andy wasn't going to vote on it, and he said, even if we had quorum, that's why, if I misunderstood.
I would vote, but it would not be a positive vote.
Okay,
Correct.
well, but it needs to be a vote anyways.
We need at least 11 voting members. We only have 10.
10, yeah. The 19 includes us. There's like 6 staff on
Okay,
the call.
so you short one member.
Appears so. Correct.
Is Lynn Filson a voting member?
No, she is not. She said earlier she is not. She's just participating as a public member. So yeah, we've been tracking the quorum, guys. So there's only 10. Christina, I think she tried calling those who left, but to Chair Sam's point, there's no way you can tell when people are going to leave. So that's kind of hard to monitor. And anticipating this item to be lengthy, so
But Christina, Stephanie or Christina, in the bylaws of the committee, isn't there a stipulation that says that if there's less than a quorum, there can still be a vote?
No, if we don't have a quorum, there cannot be a vote.
Okay.
Okay, I don't know if I am an alternate.
And that is per the Brown Act.
yeah, it's not the TCC charter, it's just Brown Act.
I don't know if I'm an alternate or not. I was not asked to attend.
So given the feedback, I think from Andy, maybe Leah, I don't know, maybe the members can speak up, but doesn't sound like we can vote. So my question is to you all, should we do a doodle to meet sooner than the next TCC or wait till the next TCC? I think that's the question.
Yeah, Stephanie, I like your initial approach, which was to kind of defer to John and Colin on whether or not they would be ready by the time we have a potential special meeting. And if not, we go ahead and forego the whole process of doodling and just hold it over to the next meeting. So
Well,
can we, like, would you guys just need maybe like a day or two to think about it, get back to us? And if we can do the special meeting, let's go ahead and go through that process. But if not, go ahead and just hold it over until the next regularly scheduled TCC.
So can I ask a question for Stephanie and Christina? This is an advisory group, right? What happens if you don't vote on it?
what happens if you, no, so the process for OBAG, I believe you need approval for TCC, it doesn't need to be unanimous. I think Andy shared that he will not be voting in the positive manner, and I don't know who else would be in that boat, but I think for staff, it would be favorable if you get everyone on board just for the sake of the whole process. But I can't.
But I'm saying is this an advisory committee?
Are you saying whether or not their vote matters? Is that what you're asking?
No,
Is that what you're saying?
Is it the vote matter? Is it an advisory capacity or not?
What is your? I guess I want to know what you mean by that. If it is
an advisory capacity, you can vote against it, but we take it into advisory, and we can.
Oh yes, yes, that's what I'm saying. They don't all need to vote positively.
Yeah.
Unanimous vote, but I'm saying for your process that may be something you want to have, but that's I leave it up to you how you want to present that to the board.
Okay, well, there's a lot of moving parts here, so.
Right. So
I'm just asking. I don't know how this.
Well, I guess regardless, John, there's no quorum, so you can't vote.
Okay.
You cannot vote today, so
right.
That's the bottom line. And Saravana, you had a question. I don't know if it pertains to this discussion.
Yeah, just to add to it, I know there were some comments to be addressed as what was said, but if staff, CCTA, if they are able to address it or develop a language, and then can you get the words in email? I'm just
get the what in what? I'm sorry, sir.
By through email rather than having a meeting, because I know scheduling a meeting will be one task.
Yeah, I asked Christina. I think per Brown Act, voting cannot be done through email.
No.
I asked the same
Correct.
question.
Yeah, the voting can't be done through email, nor can discussion because it's an agendized item. So we need to discuss it within the committee meeting.
So we receive a lot of comments, and we can certainly look at them and incorporate those comments into the document and bring it to the PC. So we can incorporate the comments, okay? And bring it back to the next TCC, whatever that meeting is. Then besides just seeing your comments incorporated to the documents and addressing all your questions and concerns, what else do we need to do as staff what else do we need to do as staff in addition to addressing the comments and answering your questions?
Yeah, I think that's good. Summarizing how the comments were addressed for the update to the planning committee, and then that might even help expedite the next discussion on this. Sorry about the noise in the background when we get to the next TCC meeting, whether it's a special meeting or scheduled meeting. Does that make sense?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch
So
that.
I guess Chair Stamps is saying summarize the comments, right? And then a response to your comment, to the comments, right, Chair Stamps, so that the next
Yeah.
time we meet,
So
it can be streamlined in the discussion.
it sounds like you all are still going to the planning committee on the 4th, regardless of whether we can vote on this before that, right?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I just don't, that's why I'm asking Christina and Stephanie. I don't know what the process is if
So-
it doesn't get voted at the TCC.
So I think
Well-
your call for project or your OBAC 3 process involves taking the application and the call to this committee for approval, and then it forwards it on to
recommendation
PC
for
and the
approval.
board. Correct. So right now, we cannot vote because we don't have quorum. And then second is, I guess it doesn't matter how they vote, but basically you need their vote. So I think the question at hand really right now is when that would be. Should we call a special meeting? Would you guys be ready? Or we wait till next month? It's regularly scheduled. So
Well,
I
maybe
so
let
that-
us know if you're able to call a special meeting. I mean, we'll start working on the incorporating the comments because whether we take it to PC or not, as you know, PC agenda is going to be released like next week.
Yeah.
But that's besides the point. That's this process. We want to make sure we meet we address all the questions, concerns that this group have. We're not going to be dismissive of it. But what I'm saying is that once Leah and others provide us their comments in addition to the ones that we've heard today, once we incorporate those comments and we have a new draft, what else do you need from us as staff to have you vote one way or another? If you're not happy with the way that it's drafted out, and then we incorporate all the comments, did that change anything, or what else are we or do you want us to do? I mean, I think another way that I've experienced before, not in a non-quorum, I have to watch my time, not in a non-quorum situation, but if there are comments, even substantial comments on something that staff has produced, the committee can certainly ask for or approve on condition that staff address all the comments, concerns that the committee has. So I've been through that process before, but again, this is a different situation when you don't even have a quorum. So I don't know what the process is.
So I think the process is to call another meeting to vote whether or not it's in the next coming weeks or the next regularly scheduled meeting. And then the folks here will vote, and we will need to make sure that we have quorum. And then to your question about at what point would it be enough, that's to the committee. I think, they can say, John, Colin, you've addressed most of our comments, and the remainder, we feel comfortable moving forward to the authority board. That can happen, or they can say they're not still, so that I'm saying they don't all need to be addressed. All the comments are addressed, but the group can tell you they feel comfortable enough for you to move it forward to the board. That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Is that clear? Okay.
No, I know the
That's
answer
happened.
already. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's happened before too. Like, they feel like it's in good shape. There's some remainder comments that should be addressed, and they feel comfortable moving forward, contingent upon resolving those lingering comments. That can happen too. So, but I defer to everyone else that's still on the call if I capture that correctly. But that's the process. But what your comments are, I cannot weigh in on. What will happen next time with the flavor of the comments or the magnitude of the comments. That's maybe those who've made comments can address that or talk about that. Are these only ones? Are there more that you would like them to take a look at before we see each other again? Maybe that's helpful to expedite the process next time. Maybe Leah, Saravana, Andy, you guys were the most vocal or had the most suggestions and comments. Maybe send them to John and Colin before we meet again to help with
Yeah, I
the
submitted
conversation.
mine already, but in this kind of, at this point, it seems like we don't have a quorum and it's an internal issue for the CCTA to decide how they want to proceed. So I kind of would like to end the meeting if we can't do anything here. I mean, you guys kind of need to figure out amongst yourselves how, if it's a doodle poll or whatever.
Right. Yeah, I agree, Leah. Just trying to address John's comments, but yeah, I think the only thing we can do is to reconvene and we can work on when. And then you guys can help with providing more comments, or, you know, if you think of more, send them beforehand for John and Colin's review before we meet again. So a lot of it could be already in their hands before we meet.
And I'll put this out there, if you guys want to send me a new draft, I try to look that over before you put it into a packet and finalize it.
Yeah, so for the TCC members who's remaining, if you have any additional comments or you want to reiterate your comment, just send it over to me and Colin by Friday. If by tomorrow, maybe that's too soon, but within the next couple of days, so that we can start making sure that we've addressed every comments, and then we don't know when that next meeting is going to be, but at least we would start working on that.
And
I don't have any
one-
additional comments.
I don't have any additional comments too. I think Leah captured all the details, so which
Okay.
is what I was going to go through. So
Okay,
mine
great.
is
Thank you.
more straightforward too. Just for the future, probably even if you know that this is a more deeper and longer item, we want to say, I'm sure that we are going to do that, but it's like remind people, because it is also the TCC members, jurisdiction members, they also have a responsibility to make sure that things are voted upon. So, and they have the responsibility to stay to count their vote in, right? So probably upfront, we have so many people, but we need a quorum to approve this item. So be aware, if you are a voting member, if you are dropping in, let the people know. So I think it should be a shared responsibility. And I understand how it feels right now for you, John. Sorry.
Chair Stamps, I think we kick things back to you.
All right, so it sounds like we've got the process nailed down, and we're good to go on that. The comments are received to you guys, and you'll figure out the process in the next couple of days. Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Marathon item, but it sounds like we're getting through it. We'll go ahead and close that since we don't have a quorum. Is there any other business from the committee members, anybody from staff? I think everybody's anxious to bounce. So we'll go ahead and move on from other business to adjournment. We'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting at 4:57. Thank you, everyone, very much. Thank you, staff, for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.